Welcome. Hello. Today we're talking about common frustrations for beginning singers. And I say, here, this light is a little bit odd. Common to help you feel better about these very frustrating things. You are not alone. And most people do struggle with these things at the beginning of their singing journey. They're all solvable problems. There's nothing wrong with you if you're experiencing any of this. So, what we want to cover today are voice cracks, range limitations, running out of breath, sounding nasal, and disliking the sound of your own voice on a recording. So, hi, Jonah, Anshi, All Things Leads, Fashionista Girl, welcome. And if you have a frustration that I don't get to, the last 15 minutes are just Q&A. So, we've got that to look forward to. But the first thing we'll talk about, and by the way, you can drop questions or comments in the chat as we go along. I'll look there periodically. Just know the last 15 minutes are yours totally. Okay, so voice cracks, you've experienced this, I'm positive. Usually, voice cracks happen when we're trying to sing from low to high and we're carrying up too much vocal weight or resistance or volume. Some teachers, myself included, might say we're carrying up too much chest voice or speaking voice mode. So what that sounds like is, as I'm going to sing higher, and eventually my speaking voice or chest voice mode stops working. I have to access my head voice in order to get to those higher pitches. So Esther is asking, how do I keep my voice from cracking while singing? So we will talk about this right now, but just know, Esther, that there are other live lessons that talk about this in depth for the entire hour. So if you want, later on, you can check out this live lesson. I'll get the link for you. There's 2 that I can think of. So this is one, smoothing out your voice, and particularly smoothing out the transition from low to high. And then I did another live lesson on cracking, so let me find that link for you as well. So those will just be a little bit more focused. But generally, okay, if you can relate to that, let me know in the comments. If your voice has never cracked, I mean, I just don't believe you. Everyone's voice cracks. So, the first step in overcoming these vocal cracks, first step is to access both main modes of your voice. So, you have speech mode. Hey, hello. And when we're singing in that range and singing with that strength, hey, hey, we would call that chest voice or speaking voice or mode one. And then the other main mode of your voice is what we call head voice or falsetto. So if you give me a high pitched woo-hoo sound, woo-hoo, and then sustain that, woo-hoo, now you're in head voice or falsetto, and you'll notice we typically use chest voice or speaking voice for lower pitches, head voice or falsetto for higher pitches. So that's step one. Can you access both? And usually, what we'll do are exercises that have you accessing both distinctly. So, for example, I would give an exercise like, hey, ooh, hey. Or for a student who is really having a hard time finding head voice, I might start them in head voice and go, ooh, hey, ooh. Then the next step would be starting to add some pitches in between and getting you to shift registers or change registers. So, an example of an exercise like that would be singing on ooh, so there's a little bit of a slide there, or something like coo 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 coo. So you're starting in chest voice, coo coo coo. On your way up, you're eventually transitioning to head voice, coo 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 coo. You're in head voice, and then coming back down, coo 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 coo. You're finding that chest or speaking voice function on the bottom. Um, Accessing both of those main modes is so, so important even before we develop what we call mix or middle voice. And that is a balance or a blend of those two main modes. But first, you got to access both and be comfortable switching between the two. Um, the other way that we overcome these voice cracks is understanding the desired intensity of the sound we're about to produce and how to make it. Um, Also, understanding, I guess this is kind of the same thing, understanding the demands of what you're about to sing. Um, so sometimes, and I was working with a singer earlier today where this was the case. We were attempting to sing a song and the pitches were well within the singer's range. They could do it. It's just they weren't prepared for it. Um they were approaching that note as if it was going to be this easy head voice note, and it wasn't. It required a little bit more connection to their speaking voice. Um so I'll take the example. One singer I worked with earlier today, the song is just in my head, is Lay Me Down, Sam Smith. So that song, the chorus, we go, "Can I lay by your side?" Okay, and especially for a lower voice, that's tricky. That is a little bit of a stretch. Those pitches that we're singing are E to G sharp 4. So it would be very, very easy for a singer to go, "Can I?" and crack, or "Can I?" crack on the high note, right? Um, if they're not prepared for the intensity and the demands of what they're about to sing, your voice is just going to choose the path of least resistance. And usually the path of least resistance is cracking into head voice. So again, there's nothing wrong if you're experiencing that. Um, so the first step, like overall, we've already covered is accessing both registers of the voice and starting to build mix. But then the second step, kind of very practically, would be warming up to that note. So what I did with this student today is actually had them sing higher than it. But that's a different story. If I was working with you and this was the first time you were working on this song, I would say, okay, let's warm up to it. It's a G sharp 4. What do we want that to sound like? We want it to sound like chest voice. We want it to sound maybe a little belty. Okay, so we discuss that. And then we think, what's a warm up syllable or a warm up that we know helps us get into that mode? And that'll vary from singer to singer, but I really like singing on wah or weh, something like that. So what we do is with that G sharp 4 in mind, we'll warm up to it. We're not just going to jump straight onto that note. I told this student earlier that's like just jumping right into the splits. We don't do that. We're going to warm up and stretch out first. So, for example, you can try this with me if this is a song you're interested in singing. So, I'd start you much, much lower and sing whoa, 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 whoa. Give it a try. Whoa, 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 whoa. And then we're walking up gradually. We're stretching gradually. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. You're letting your jaw drop. By the way, you might crack if your mouth is just not open enough. So if you're going whoa, 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 okay, you have to have space when you sing. Okay, here we are. Whoa, 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 whoa. Nice drop in the jaw. Whoa, 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 whoa. For some singers, they might have to widen their mouth as well. For some singers, this wah sound might not work as well. Maybe you need kind of a bratty sound to help you find this connection. So if that's you, you might try na, 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 na. When I said before, it varies from singer to singer. So if wah doesn't work, think of another sound that helps you find this strong connection to your chest voice or chest dominant mix. Okay, we're almost there. Whoa, 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 whoa. Last one. Whoa, 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 whoa. Feels good. Okay, so we've made it to that G sharp. We've warmed up to the G sharp. In this instance, I might even keep warming up past it so that it doesn't feel high for you. So we could go a little bit past. Wah, 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 wah. That way, when we now sing, can I? It doesn't feel like the ceiling. It doesn't feel like the highest note we can sing because it's not. We've stretched past it. Okay. Next step, I would have you sing on that syllable that helps. So if we're singing this song, if "wah" helped you, I will have you sing the entire chorus basically on "wah." Wah, 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 wah. And then, back to lyrics if you don't need it anymore. But these are just baby steps, tools to get you singing that pitch without cracking. Um, and then, yeah, as I said, there are many, many more exercises and tips that we could talk about, but I'm just pointing you toward those other live lessons that dive into voice cracks in particular. Let's answer a few questions and then we'll move on to range limitations. Cal said it's been a while that I've used 30 Day Singer because I've been busy learning songs that I've been working on recently, but it's good to be back. Awesome. Yay. And I want you to be singing songs. I don't want you to just be doing warm ups all day. So if singing songs has been keeping you busy, that's great. Anchi says, I've been waiting for this live for a while. Whenever I sing, my voice is all tired and sore, and it happens every day. I've been trying to rest it, but I can't. Do you have any ideas? Oh man, Anchi, I'm sorry about that. If anytime you sing your voice is feeling tired and sore, um, and this is an ongoing thing, that's something that I would consider getting checked out, bringing up to my doctor to see, is there anything going on there? It's a different thing if you told me, my voice feels good, and then, after 30 minutes of intense singing or an hour of practice, then my voice is feeling tired. That would be one thing. But if it's tired and sore every time you sing, and this is a recurring issue, I would definitely consider getting that checked out. Um, I might consider some gentle exercises, but I I fall on the side of caution because my number one priority is your vocal health. So just so that you know, the rule of thumb, the guiding rule of thumb is if you're experiencing pain or hoarseness for 2 weeks or longer, that's when we call the doc and we see what they can help us with. Um, I didn't phrase that sentence well. We see how they can help. But that's the rule of thumb. Hoarseness for 2 weeks or longer. Of course, this is going to be a little bit different if you are actively sick. So if you have been sick for 2 weeks and you still have a sore throat, that's another thing. We're kind of more talking about pain, hoarseness, in the absence of illness or once all of your symptoms are gone. So that's my answer. Yeah. And then I definitely crack on Sam Smith songs. These songs tend to be in a higher range, so you are not alone there. Okay, voice cracks, our next frustrating thing, range limitations. We want to sing higher or lower. And you're so welcome. By the way, if you have access to a laryngologist, that would be ideal. So, in most healthcare systems, at least where I am, you would first go to your primary care provider and they might need to uh, refer you to a laryngologist, but I would just let them know, hey, I'm a singer or I'm working on my singing and this is what I'm experiencing. And then see where they take it. They might look into diet, acid reflux, allergies, all kinds of things. But if there's an underlying issue there that's separate from voice use, then we want to address that first. Okay, so range limitations. We want to sing higher or lower than we currently can, and we're frustrated that we can't. Overall, what I wrote down is that there's a balance between stretching yourself and knowing where you're currently comfortable. Um, I am a big fan of range extension for two reasons. One, because there are songs that require a wide range, and I want you to be able to sing those songs if you want to. And two, think about it this way. If I only ever sing songs within an octave range, let's say A to A, um, and that it's hard to think of songs that would fit within that. But um, let's say that is the case. If I never stretch lower than that A and I never stretch higher than this A, then those are pretty firm limits on my voice. That's the basement, that's the ceiling, and it probably sounds like the basement and the ceiling. If that's the lowest I ever sing, it's going to sound low. If that's the highest I ever sing, it's going to sound high. Whereas, let's say we live in a world where I'm only singing songs from A to A, but I occasionally will exercise down to an A flat, a G, even an F sharp. When that's the case, now that low A doesn't sound low. It sounds stronger, fuller, more stable and reliable. And same thing with that high A as well. If I'm stretching higher than it, then it won't sound like the top of my range. So when I'm pushing students to sing higher and sing lower, it's not because I think they need to necessarily, or because I'm obsessed with everyone having this super wide range. It's just I want their usable range, their comfortable range, which is going to be narrower than their overall range, to be as comfy and as beautiful as possible. Um, so, anyways, we have other things on range extension. You can check those out. Ultimately, when it comes to range extension, find the exercises or the sounds that work for your voice. Um, in general, the best things for range extension are what we call semi-occluded or semi-closed sounds. So, examples of that would be straw singing, lip trills. I really love singing on an NG. That just feels so easy for my voice. But all of these are semi-occluded or semi-closed, meaning it's not just an open vocal tract that we're dealing with or an open vowel. Ah, there's no closure there. There's closure at my lips. There's closure between the tongue, back of the tongue, and the soft palate. There's closure. Lip trill, obviously, there's closure. I might have mentioned that already. In general, those are the types of exercises that are going to be easiest for you. So, if you're doing a range extension warm up or something like that, if you reach a point where you can no longer sing on a vowel, switch to something semi-closed. And again, find what works for you because you might hate the lip trill. You might hate straw singing. I don't know. But let's say we're doing high range extension and you're supposed to be singing on an ah. So let's say you're going ah, ah, and the sound is cutting out, or maybe you're getting a little bit squeezy. Ah, okay. No need to keep singing under those circumstances. That's not really what we want to be doing. So I'd rather have you stop singing on a vowel and sing on something semi-closed that feels more relaxed to you. Or so much better, so much easier. And continue to go up or down, whatever end of the spectrum you're working on. And then when you reach a point where no sound is coming out, that's fine, but you can keep going as long as some pitches are coming through and just think the pitch. So what I mean is, let's say we're doing this pattern. And we keep walking higher. And let's say I've already reached the point where a vowel doesn't work, so I have to be on something semi-closed. I'm reaching the point where I might not get that highest note. It's still there. It's still there. It doesn't sound good, but it's still there. So right there, I'm not going to squeeze or press to make that high note come out. I'm just thinking the note. And you can almost hear it's like the note wants to come, but I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to squeeze because squeezing, constricting, forcing is not how I ever want to be producing sound. So why am I going to do that just for the sake of range extension? So those are the steps that I would follow. Whatever you're singing on, if you reach a point where it stops working, go to something semi-closed first. Okay? So my favorite is the NG. And then when you reach a point where it's too high for you to get to that highest pitch, just think the pitch. Don't sing a wrong pitch just to keep going. So for example, I was nowhere near that highest pitch. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Think the high note or the low note that you can't sing and just keep going until you're totally out. Um, More on range limitations. Prioritize full range warm-ups each day that you can. So just as a part of your daily practice, be stretching as high as you can on that particular day and as low as you can on that particular day. And because your voice is tissue and, cartilage and um, muscle, your voice is going to have different limitations from day to day, and that's fine. It's 100% not a problem for your range to fluctuate a little bit from day to day. Please don't get discouraged by that. Your instrument is a part of your body. And in the same way that your body is going to feel different from day to day, your voice is going to feel different and function a little differently from day to day. There are so many different factors, allergies, illness, menstrual cycles. Um, so don't beat yourself up. If over time you find, I lost a few notes on the top of my range and it's been a couple weeks or it's been, a week, then do some investigation. But one bad voice day is nothing to cry about. And then last thing before I answer Nick's questions, look for progress when it comes to range extension over weeks and months, not days. You would not be looking for progress in other physical skills over a course of a couple days. You should be seeing some sort of improvement, um, but I think a lot of times with singing, because our instrument is hidden, we just think, oh, it's just a mental thing. I just need to get over this. I need to learn the right technique and then I'll have it. But it's also a physical thing. So um, you wouldn't set out, again, I'm going to use the splits analogy. You wouldn't set out to do the splits in 2 days. You would set out to work toward it gradually and increase your flexibility over weeks and months. So treat range extension in the same way. Be patient with yourself. Okay, Nick was saying, any general advice on retraining a belt style? I feel like I've lost a bit of power or consistency since being sick with COVID last month. I began with softer songs and small steps, so my tone was still there, but frustratingly, my belting is a bit gone. Yeah. So, Nick, what I might do, and this is for me personally, if this works for you, great. But I would use bratty, duck quacky, nasal kind of sounds. So think like an over the top musical theater impression, um, rather than going for this very full, deep, rich, hey, that kind of sound. To me, brighter, again, bratty, duck quacky, nasal, those sounds feel lighter and feel easier to access. Um, and there's hopefully less chance of you maybe overblowing the chords or pushing. Um, so that's what I would start with. And even before that, I would start with just getting a nice chest dominant mix sound without the belt style. So for example, what we did before, walking on wah, you could try that first, wah 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 wah, and as high as you want to go with that, and then start to add a little bit of belt style just by opening up the mouth wider. Wah, 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 wah. Already a little bit more of a boost, an energy boost in that sound. And then over time, you can start to add a little bit more intensity, a little bit more volume. But that's where I would start personally. Okay, we've talked about voice cracks, range limitations, running out of breath. This is another good one. Um, so, first, to not run out of breath when we sing, we first need to establish a relationship between our breathing muscles and making sound. There's a relationship there because we don't make sound without breath. But it is also very possible for us to just go, ah, ah, and it feels like all of the action is from my shoulders up. It's just my throat really involved. Versus um ah ah, and I know you can't see my tummy, but my tummy is now active. So it is possible for you to, as they say, sing from your throat. That's usually what people mean is singing in a way that it's just your kind of just your throat um taking on most of the job of singing. So, how do we do this? How do we establish a relationship between our breathing muscles and sound making? Easiest way to do that is to feel what naturally happens when you exhale on a hiss. So you can try that. Sss, sss, and you'll feel something happening as long as it's a strong hiss. Don't give me this baby like nothing's happening there. Strong hiss. Sss, sss. For me, naturally, my belly works. um, so notice what naturally happens there. You're going to feel something happening in your abdomen, and then go from that nice strong hiss to a hum. Sm, sm, and see if you can keep that gentle engagement. So we're not going sm, sm, and losing it. We want to keep that belly engaged. And I see that question from Jonah. I'll answer that shortly. Um, so that's step one is even before you sing, before you do your vocal warm up for the day, establish this relationship between your abdomen or your breathing muscles and making sound. If you find that you're running out of breath, consider what's going on with your vocal folds. Are you leaking air? Are you singing with a very breathy ah, kind of sound? If that's the case, number one, it's going to be harder to say support that sound. Ah, you can do it, but it's really tough. Um, and then just think of it this way. We're oversimplifying, but think about you've got this container of air in your lungs. And if your vocal folds are not coming together very well, it's like you've left the cap off of that container. And you're just leaking all that air that you worked hard to get. Um, so consider if you have an overly airy or breathy tone, singing with a little bit more intensity, slightly higher volume, perhaps. Um, Third, remember your posture. If your shoulders are rolling forward, and that's actually a good time to pause and answer Jonah's question. If your shoulders are rolling forward, your chest is concave, your rib cage is collapsing, then it's way harder for you to keep that abdomen active. Um, so Jonah asked, does it affect making the exercises or singing seated rather than standing? So if we're singing, does it have an effect either um, yeah. Okay. I was trying to rephrase and then I'm just abandoning that ship. Um, so, yes and no. It's very possible for you to have good posture when seated. The reason we usually say stand if you can is because it comes a bit more naturally to some people to stand tall than to sit tall. Because oftentimes when we are in a chair, we kind of relax, and most of us aren't standing like this. um, so that's the main reason. It just simply feels a bit more natural to stand up tall than to sit up tall. Um, if you're in a chair, ideally, if you can scooch to the edge of your chair so your butt is on the edge and your feet are on the ground or on a platform of some kind. Um, the things you want to look out for when seated, the things that kind of tend to happen are because we're sort of like on our laptops, we tend to roll forward. Our chin juts forward. So those are things to look out for when you're seated. The best advice and most succinct, I'll end with this, is pretend like you are standing and then bring that standing posture down into your seat and you're good. um, I personally feel, especially for more challenging singing, I do better when standing. Um, so again, if you have both options, then try both and see what works best for you. For me, it's easier to feel my body engaged when I'm standing because I'm using my legs. My legs right now, as I'm seated, are just kind of chilling. So again, yeah, best way is to take as much of your standing posture into your seat as possible, to scooch forward to the edge. And I know a lot of us, for many reasons, do have to sing seated. If you have a piano in front of you, so and anyways. Okay, Maria has a question about the larynx. If you have a bad position, is the vocal range going to be limited? I think that I'm not being able to reach some notes for that reason. Maria, yeah, that's very possible. So we want to make clear there's no inherently good or bad position for the larynx to be. Your larynx moves. And by the way, your larynx is your voice box. If you've found your Adam's apple or that bump in the middle of your throat, you've found part of your larynx. So there's nothing inherently wrong in your larynx rising or lowering, but you are right. If your larynx is in the habit of, let's say, rising for higher pitches, that could limit your range. So something to try would be slightly dopey exercises, like let's say goo 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 goo, or just a nice deep rich ooh, kind of feeling slightly yawny and spacious. Sounds like that can help your larynx stay in a slightly lower position, to help retrain it from always rising for high notes. So yeah, I think your instincts are correct there. Okay, two more things. I'm going to try to get through these two things very, very fast, and then the last 15 minutes are just yours for Q&A. Um, but I haven't even finished running out of breath. So consider your vocal folds, remember your posture, use baby steps. So sing on something easier for you to feel that connection with your breath, and then work towards the more challenging thing of singing on lyrics. So, for example, you might have this line that lasts for a long time. First thing to do is sing it on something that helps you feel connected to your breath. So, let's say sing it on a lip trill, and then sing it maybe on ba 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 or ma ma ma, something that has a little bit of support and is easier than singing on the lyrics, and then go back to lyrics. But you've got baby steps or, scaffolding in place. Um, that's so much of what singing training is providing some support and then loosening that support until the support is gone. And then last, for running out of breath, add a physical movement. Some that have worked well for me. Well, I had a classical teacher in college who had me sing like this, and that was to keep my posture good till the end of the phrase. And she would see me start to get tired, and she would, remind me, "Oh, keep it up." That was just to force my rib cage in an elevated position. Um, so that's one physical movement. Another physical movement would be taking your arms and inhaling, bringing your arms up, and then singing with your arms up. Da, 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 da. Again, it's much, much easier to keep your rib cage elevated when you're in a physical posture that necessitates that. Um, and then another idea for using physical movement is a little bit more attached to the length of the phrase. So let's say we have that line, the "Can I stay by your side?" And let's say we're kind of running out of steam at the end there. I might add a movement that lasts a little bit longer than the end of the phrase. So what I mean by that is I'm going to draw maybe this arch in front of me. Can I lay by your side? And I didn't end my arch until I was actually done singing. Um, that kind of goes along with this idea of pretending the phrase is a little bit longer than it actually is so that you stay energized and supported, so to speak, through the end of the phrase, not just to it, if that makes sense. Um, okay, sounding nasal. I'm going to run through this real quick because we have done other lessons on nasal sounds or issues with tone. So let me find that for you very quickly. Man, so many videos on tone. If you look up tone 30-day singer, you're going to find quite a few. So this first one is fixing common issues with vocal tone. That's a 1-hour lesson. This one is really, really short. It's under 4 minutes, but it's also good on tone. Check that out if you're short on time. And then there's more. There's more. Again, if you just look up tone 30-day singer, um, there will be more exercises for you. But to go over this super, super quickly, if you're sounding nasal, you have to open up more space in your mouth and your throat. So if you're singing, it's not anyone's fault. It's just the fact that your mouth is so closed and you do not have space within your vocal tract. Your vocal tract is your throat and your mouth. So we need more space first. Take a nice, relaxed inhale. Oh. Notice that sound. You're never going, ah. if you're sighing, oh, and you're relaxed, or yawning, you're not going to have a nasal sound. You're going to have this open space in your mouth and throat. So we want some of that space when we sing. Um, Thinking and training on an is also really, really helpful. So if you have that space, that nice sigh or yawn space, then singing on an it would be hard to sound nasal singing on an and last thing for sounding nasal, mind your tongue. A lot of singers, the back of the tongue starts to creep up. And that causes this overly nasal tone quality. So keep an eye on that. Consider singing in front of a mirror and See if you can see the back of your tongue rising. And if so, again, is great for lowering the back of the tongue. You could sing on something like ga, 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 ga. Oh man, I'm gonna yawn again. Sorry, yawning's contagious. I hope you're all yawning with me. Last thing, and then it's just Q&A. Uh, Disliking the sound of your voice on a recording. The only way to get over this is to do it more often so that you get used to it. Um, it is, yay, Jonah's yawning with me. Um, the reason that most people do dislike the sound of their voice on recording, okay? That is just true. Um, the reason for that is kind of interesting. You're used to the sound of your voice from inside your body, and that includes the vibration through your body, through your bones, even. Um, as a result of you hearing internally, um, you're hearing more low frequency being boosted. When you're just talking in the air, you're not getting that internal sound. So when you're talking into a microphone or on the phone or whatever else that's recording you, you're only getting those sound waves from the air that then, they're bouncing around the room and all of that, but you're not getting that internal low frequency vibration anymore. So, almost without exception, people think their voices sound deeper and richer than they are in actuality. They think they sound deeper and richer, and then they hear themselves on a recording and they're like, whoa, I sound young. I sound nasal. I sound like a little kid. Um, it's so common. So, again, only thing to do is start recording yourself more often so you just get used to it. Um, and consider some light editing because this is a tip that I gave on TikTok the other day, and people resonated with it because this is just it's common, you're not alone. Um, Consider some light editing because most of the recordings that you hear, most of the performances are edited. Even the live ones, if they are truly live, um, they have been edited. And when I say that, I don't mean necessarily it was pitch correction or auto tune or anything like that, but EQ, um, reverb, compression, and more are done on any vocal that you hear. So you're then comparing the sound of you, what we'd call a dry recording or an unedited recording. You're comparing of that vocal your phone, no processing, no help, to all of these vocals that are highly produced, in a studio, great acoustics, or, it's just not a fair comparison. So I think it's helpful. Um, I would consider an app to edit your vocal a little bit and see if that's a little bit more palatable for you to listen to. Um, Liking the sound of your voice on recording, start with easy songs you feel good singing and feel emotionally connected to. Because if you are starting with crazy challenging songs, of course you're not going to sound how you want to. If it feels challenging and feels like a stretch in the moment, I mean, how do you think it's going to sound on the recording when you're also being hard on yourself and, you know, think that your tone sounds worse? um, so start easy. Don't get off on the wrong foot. And then last, get specific with your stylistic analysis of other singers. A lot of times people, they're so concerned about what they sound like and they're concerned about the melody and the lyrics, but they're not really paying attention to stylization. And that's what makes singing sound like singing, sound good. Um, so I would take that next step to not just worry about the melody and lyrics. Once you've got that down, um, start paying attention to how the singer is singing and um, analyze it, copy it. Try to incorporate that as well. You're gonna start sounding more like a singer. um, okay, we made it. We made it through. Oh boy. Um, and Jonah's saying they're learning to equalize their voice. Very cool. So, uh, yeah, EQ, compression, reverb, those are the basics that any vocal would have. But if you wanted to look up apps for singers, like easy editing apps for singers, um, there are a few that I looked up the other day. Let me see if I can find that list for you. Oh, by the way, get those questions in the chat. It is Q&A time. One of the apps that I looked up was Voloco. Another was Sound Lab. Audacity has a phone app as well. So basically, any app that you find that's easy, beginner friendly, just for doing a little bit of editing of vocals. And hopefully, they have what would be called presets in there that you don't need to even get specific. You don't need to know how to edit your vocal. You would just choose a preset and then see if you like how it sounds. Okay, Logic Pro. So, Logic Pro is what I use to edit, but that has a much steeper learning curve. So I'm saying for beginners, I think there are some beginner friendly apps out there like Voloco, Sound Lab. There's another one that started with sound and I can't remember what it is. But yeah. And if you're into editing, I mean that's cool too. Audacity is free editing software. Audacity or GarageBand. So the first 2 are apps, the second 2, I mean, I'm sure GarageBand has an app too, but I think of that as more a full editing suite. By the way, Maria, if you're still here, um, I also did a whole live lesson on larynx position. Let me grab that for you. And if you're interested, you can check that out. Okay. Jonah's asking when I vocalize in the morning, my voice is tired, and I'm able to sing until like 7 7 p.m. Um, do you mean not able to sing until 7 p.m.? And then asking what you can do about it. So, unfortunately, some people's voices take longer to wake up in the morning than others. Um, okay, so you're saying unable to sing all the way until 7 p.m. That seems like a long time. What I might do, what I would personally do, Jonah, would be to not vocalize in the morning, to hold off until later in the day when hopefully your voice is a little bit more warm, has had some use, and then try vocalizing later in the day. You can instead of kind of shocking your system and forcing it before it's ready. Um, I would I would wait. See what happens if instead of the morning, you start your vocal practice in the afternoon and see if you can push up that time. Whew, that is so early. I don't think my voice would be ready at 6 a.m. either. Oh, no. Okay, Pete's asking, does strength come with practice? Is there some kind of quick fix? I use breath support, but my voice is still very weak. I've been practicing for about 3 months now. So that's a great question, Pete. I would say it could be both. That strength does come with practice. However, it's really helpful to know what works for your specific voice, what syllables, what vowels, what exercises. Um, so let me find a video or two that I think will help you. Um, but that's one of the big things that I do with students is kind of figure out, okay, this is the goal. What exercises work best um, to help you toward that goal, and it can feel kind of like a quick fix when you find, let's say, a syllable or a sound that works really well for you. Um, so I know that might feel like a little bit of a non-answer, but I do think it's both. Um, okay, so here is how to strengthen your voice, and maybe this live lesson will cover something that you haven't yet. Um, and then this one as well, the common issues with tone. That's another one that one of the common issues is a weak or breathy sound. Let me see if there's anything else. I think that's a good place to start, though, is the strengthening a weak voice. Okay, Nick was saying, gotcha, not breathy, just weak. Okay, okay. Well, Pete, without hearing you, one thing that I would suggest is doing some speaking voice exercises. If you feel like your speaking voice does have a good amount of strength to it, kind of carrying that into your singing. So, an example would be an exercise like, hey, that's mine. Hey, that's mine. Or, that's mine. That's mine. So, you're speaking first and then kind of singing the second one. Um, the yeah, the idea there is using what you just naturally know how to do, which is speak in a strong voice and then applying that to your singing. Um, but yeah, check out that live lesson. There might be some vowels, syllables, concepts that could be helpful for you. Nick is saying, would you suggest to any singer to diversify their style by singing in their own accent? I'm from London, but haven't tested how it would sound in my spoken British. I just sing in an American accent instinctively. Interesting. Um, I mean, I am such a fan of people singing in their native accent. I I think it's worth a try. I think people kind of default to the American accent because that's where um, so much music is produced, Hollywood, all of that. So for marketability, I feel like people kind of default to that, but don't necessarily need to. And I hope that over time we hear more diversity in accents. Um, but absolutely give it a try. You'll be the judge of that. And then maybe get some inspiration by other singers who do sing in a British accent. Um, and if you like that sound, then that can be, inspiration for you. David, I don't hear the difference from when I sing nasal to when I sing with the space. So it's been really hard for me to improve. Both feel healthy, but again, it's been hard to identify that nasal sound. Well, David, maybe the way that your voice is set up, maybe there isn't that big of a difference. Um, some people do kind of have brighter tone quality to their voice. Um, so I think a good test would be try to record yourself singing in both modes and then see if you can tell a difference. But um, so I included sounding nasal on this list because it's something that I hear beginning singers complain about and ask about quite a lot. But there's nothing inherently wrong with a bright sound or even nasalized sounds at times. It just tends to tends to be a little bit grating if you over rely on that brightness or nasality. But yeah, nothing inherently bad with that. Couple more minutes. If you have questions, throw them at me. I don't think I missed any. But yeah, David, I would say the real test then is how it sounds on recording, cuz it is like some of the changes that we make when we're singing are so subtle that in the moment it's tough. And keep in mind tone is subjective, you know? What you want to sound like is ultimately what matters. Um would character voices help him find the nasal side? Sure, absolutely. Um if if you want to. Pitch casualty, can you give any examples of okay. Coach has been helping pointing out when I do it and when it sounds nasal. Okay, then if you've got someone helping you, that's awesome. Um yeah. Tone is subjective. I typically um I will say it's not something that is usually coming from me in a voice lesson. It's usually coming from my student of being like, "Oh, I don't like this sound." And then we work on it. Jonah's asking what the difference is between falsetto and head voice. It depends on what voice teacher you ask, but if you ask most contemporary voice teachers today, and by contemporary, I mean non classical, then they will most likely tell you that functionally we're dealing with the same basic function. The main difference is head voice has a higher what's called closed quotient and falsetto has a lower closed quotient. Closed quotient is for how long are the vocal folds together each time they make contact. So your vocal folds are vibrating, vibrating. Um, the One of my favorite teachers, John Henney, he described it this way. You can clap your hands, say 4 times in a set amount of seconds, but you can clap like this with my hands staying together longer, or I can clap like this. And it's still the same frequency, but the closed quotient is different. So, what that means in a less voice nerd way is head voice has a stronger sound, falsetto has a breathier sound. So, where head voice might be ah, falsetto might be ah, ah, ah. Functionally, though, they're the same. They feel very, very similar. We're approaching them in almost the same way. It's just, again, a matter of strength or closed quotient if you want to be nerdy about it. Oh, David is asking, what do you think about the mask? Is it a bad concept to learn? absolutely not a bad concept. So a lot of times you'll hear uh, placing the sound in the mask, and the mask being like a masquerade ball mask, not a this kind of mask. um, if it's helpful for you, then it's good. If it's confusing and not helpful, then it's not good. Some singers love that terminology and it makes sense to them, and other singers don't. So that's just something to get clear about with your teacher. If they're talking about placement, especially mask or forward placement, and if that helps you, if it's a good cue, great. But if you're like, that makes no sense and I don't know what to do with that, then I would ask for more specific instructions. Like, what should I do with my tongue? What should I do with my vowel? Um, Things like that that might end up giving you that sensation, but are more actionable. Okay. And last question, Harry was saying, as a guitar player, which beginner program of 30 Day Singer would you recommend I start with? So Harry, I mean, I would recommend you start with mine, but I don't demonstrate on guitar. Guitar players, I in general tend to start with John Statham's because he has a guitar with him and he's playing the guitar. Um, I I'm biased because I developed that program. So, hey, I would say try like day 1 and 2 and 3 of there's 3 beginner courses you can choose from, level 1, um, and just see which teacher you vibe with and see who you can follow along with well, and whoever that is, that's the one. Um, and there's also a level 2 course, and you would be choosing me or Abram. And if you have a voice type more similar to Abram's, choose his. If you have a voice type more similar to mine, choose mine. But for the level 1, I'm playing in 2 octaves for all voices. It's not just higher voices. Okay. I will see you all next week. Thank you so much for your questions. You're all awesome. I hope you found something helpful today, and I will see you soon. Bye.